I'm about to share with you what I consider the greatest blues chord progression of all time. We're gonna break it down note for note, chord for chord. Just be sure to stick around till the very end of the lesson because I've got a free gift for you and your guitar that you're both gonna love. Now what I love about this chord progression and what sets it apart is that it's a nice departure from your typical 1-4-5 blues progressions. Now don't get me wrong, I love me a good 1-4-5. When it's done right, it can always make me feel good and is never boring to me. But we're going to be taking a look at a blues ballad progression that not only sounds great, it's got a nice different feel, a different time signature, but it's also used in a lot of legendary blues songs. I've also adapted this chord progression to be as simple as possible and movable so you can play it in any key. So let's take a look at this progression in the key of A. We're going to be using 7 essential chord shapes, and they are as follows. We have the A major bar chord. And if you're still working on your bar chords, if you're not quite super comfortable with them, you can always play them a little bit differently. So rather than barring your first finger across all 5, on the 5th fret, on all 6 strings, you can bring it down to this, right, which is just a fragment. It's like the top half of the chord. You can totally use that. That'll absolutely work. This still registers as an A chord. And in the key of A, you have the luxury of droning out that lower A string. So you can totally make that work if you want to. But just for all intents and purposes, I'm going to stick to the regular bar chord shape, right? So it's 5th fret with first finger barred across. Got your 3rd finger on the 7th fret of the A string there. Your 4th finger on the 7th fret of the D string. Your 2nd finger is going to be on the 6th fret of the G string. And then you got your 1st finger here barring the 5th fret on the B and high E strings. So it's all 6 strings. That's our 1 chord, right? That's establishing the key that we're in. And the 2nd chord shape is super easy. What we're going to do is we're going to take this exact same chord, the same shape and everything, and we're just going to remove our pinky. But we got to make sure that our first finger is actually, because our pinky was originally fretting the 7th fret of the D string. Now we got our first finger fretting the 5th fret of the D string. But we got the rest of the chord all around it. And now that makes an A7 chord. So we've gone from an A chord to an A7 chord. We made it a dominant 7th chord. Very bluesy move. And since they hang on that 1 chord in this type of chord progression, so it's like... So it's just to give it some movement without you sticking to just the tonality of that 1 chord. You give it that nice dominant 7th sound, and it actually segues perfectly into the next chord, which is the 4 chord, a D7 chord here. And we're doing this specific shape for a couple reasons. Well, one, like I said, I simplified this chord progression so that the shapes are as simple as possible, as stripped down as possible, but mainly so that they stay in one little neighborhood on your fretboard. That's going to make it even easier to move it around. So you're really not going to need to depart from the, between the 5th and 7th frets here if we're in the key of A. This is going to be our neighborhood. So you can even just forget about the rest of the fretboard for the rest of this. With all 7 of these chords, it's pretty cool. So we got that 1 chord, we have dominant version of the 1 chord, and then we got our 4 chord here. So D7, we take our first finger and it's barring the 5 strings, omitting the low E string. So it's like starting on the A string down, you're barring that. Your 3rd finger is going to be on the 7th fret of the D string. And then your 4th finger, your pinky, is going to be on the 7th fret of the B string. So you want to make sure you hear that 5th fret on the G string there. So giving it that dominant 7 tonality. And then coming up next, we actually have a diminished chord. We have a D sharp diminished. Oop, like that. But what's great is that by starting off with this D7 shape here, because we could play a D7 chord right here, for example, or even right here. But again, we are departing really far away from this neighborhood that I'm trying to stay in, right? So when we have it like this, it's right here. So we don't need to move our hand to another part of the fretboard. We keep it right here. We just bring it on down. And then when we go to the diminished chord, so it's like you hold that shape. All you're doing is you're taking your 2nd finger and you're now fretting that 6th fret there on the A string, but the rest of the chord remains the same. See how simple that is? So you go from a very bluesy, 7th chord, dominant chord tonality to a little bit of a sophisticated diminished chord tonality, right? Just with the movement of one finger. It's really cool. So it keeps it real simple, right? So, like I said, same exact shape. You hold that, and then you just bring your second finger to fret the 6th fret there on the A string. And you got yourself that D sharp diminished. And then we're going to move back to the 1 chord. And then we're going to go to our 6 minor chord, which in the key of A is F sharp minor. But rather than going here, or up here, we're going to use a shape that's right here. We're actually going to play an inversion of an F sharp minor chord, which looks like this. It looks exactly like a 7th chord, right? If we were to start with the root note on the A string, but we're taking the shape and we're bringing it down starting on the D string. So 3rd finger is going to be on the 7th fret of the D string. 2nd finger is going to be on the 6th fret of the G string. 4th finger is going to be on the 7th fret of the B string. And your 1st finger is on the 5th fret of the high E string. So this is an F sharp minor in the first inversion. It's called that because our lowest note is actually the 3rd of F sharp. So an F sharp note, the root note would be here. And then that's our minor 3rd. So it's starting on that minor 3rd, so we call it a first inversion chord, right? We do have an F sharp note in there, There it is. It's right here on the 7th fret on the B string. That's our F sharp. And so this is our 6 minor chord, right? And we're playing it right here in this this voicing because it stays within that neighborhood, right? So makes it real simple. You're not doing a whole lot of movement to get all these really cool, colorful chords. And the next one's going to be a 2 minor chord, and which in the key of A, the 2 would be a B, right? Because that's, if the 1 is A, what comes after A in the alphabet? The musical alphabet is B, right? So our 2 would be a B, and it's a 2 minor 7 to be exact, and we're playing it like this. We're just barring, I like to take my 3rd finger with this, bar it across the bottom 4 strings here, D, G, B, high E on the 7th fret. So if we were to take this like, sometimes it's played like this, or like this in its bar chord shape, all right? It's that same chord, but we're just adapting it right here. We're still applying it properly. If you wanted to go over the thumb to apply the bass note, you could, but you really don't have to, right? To keep it simple, you can just do that. So that's our 2 minor chord, right? So far we have our 1, all right, our 1 dominant, our 4 dominant, right? And then our sharp 4 diminished. And we have our 6 minor, or we have our, back to our 1, 6 minor, and then our 2. Such beautiful movement going on here, right? And by the way, as I'm naming the, the chords and like the numbers and stuff, this is really, if you happen to be hip to the number system, you don't have to have that knowledge in order for this to make sense. This is just to explain, if you're wanting to know, if you're familiar with 1, 4, 5 in blues, what are all these extra chords? Well, that's what they are. So after we play that 2 minor chord, we're now going to play our 5 chord, which is an E7. And we're doing this particular shape because it's what keeps us right within the 5th fret to 7th fret neighborhood, right? So it's just like that F sharp minor shape, right? We just bring it up a string, everything. So it's 3rd finger on the 7th fret of the A string, 2nd finger on the 6th fret of the D string, 4th finger on the 7th fret of G, 1st finger on the 5th fret of B. And then for the turnaround, it goes back to the 1 chord, then the 4 chord, back to the 1 chord, and then the 5 chord. And then it signals that repeat, right? Of repeating the entire chord progression all over again. So the order of things for this particular example, remember we have 1 chord, right? A, then A7, D7, D sharp diminished, A again, F sharp minor, first inversion, B minor 7, E7, and then 1 again for the turnaround. 4, 1, 5. So it's 7 chords, but there's an order to them, right? So you're not just like playing all 7 chords consecutively. Obviously, it's still very centric on the 1, 4, 5, right? The main movement still focuses on the 1, 4, 5, but you have these additional chords that add a lot of really beautiful color and harmonic texture to what you're doing. So, and when you're able to play all 7 chords in just this one shape here, it makes it super movable. So what do you say we explore how to adapt this to different keys? And hey, by the way, if you're getting value out of this lesson, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to our YouTube channel. It'll really help us out and it'll let us know that you want to see more lessons just like this one. And believe me, we'd be more than happy to bring you more. So thanks in advance, and let's get right back to business. Okay, so if we wanted to adapt this to a different key, let's say if we wanted to go from A, we wanted to go to D, for example, right? Which, if you were to think of, if you're familiar with Eric Clapton's version of Someday After a While, the Freddie King song, which is originally an F, uses this same progression, right? He plays it in D, I think. Even if he doesn't, it doesn't matter. We're going to explore the different keys anyway, but I believe his version is in D. So we're going to lead with the 1 chord because the root note of the 1 chord, which is the key, reflects the key we're in, right? The root note is on the low E string. So we're going to just use our low E string to find the new root note for the new key. So we were in A here, right? With 5th fret of the low E string, that's an A note. So the rest of the chord falls into place and establishes that we are in the key of A, right? We want to move to the key of D. We want to know, obviously knowing what note, on the low E string, is what counts, but I got plenty of lessons on that if you want to find out for yourself. But I'll just tell you right now, the 10th fret of the low E string, that's a D note. So we found the D. It's like the soonest one we could find, starting from low E all the way up here to the 10th fret. So if we wanted to adapt this chord progression, we would just take those chord shapes and now just adapt them here on the fretboard. So we have our 1 chord, all right? So we have D, D7, our 4 chord here, which would be G7. All right, and then we have G sharp diminished, and then 1 chord, G, right? And then 6 minor, which this would be B minor, B minor, in the first inversion. And then we have E minor 7, and then our 5 chord, which is A7. And then, so not even knowing, even if you don't know, like, if you know the overall key that you're in, if you follow these chord shapes, you'll be good to go. As long as you are familiar with the sound, right? If you don't quite know the name, if you don't know the names of the notes and stuff, what matters most is that you establish what key you're in. For this particular way that I've adapted it to make it super movable and convenient, just within that 2 fret or that 3 fret, just region, you can pretty much move it anywhere, follow the shapes without even knowing the names. As long as you know what key you're in, right? You can just establish that and then you're golden. You can do any kind of jam, you want. If you wanted to put it on a looper or jam with a guitar player buddy, you can just find your key or even just pick the one you like the most, if it's A or G or D or whatever, and then just play it there and you're good to go. And the chords in this kind of progression are great for soloing over. Especially if you're playing in major pentatonic, you can just take a handful of notes in major pentatonic and really make them sing with those chords as a backdrop. It just like brings out just a completely different sound, like what you would normally find in a 1-4-5 blues progression. There's even songs like Oh Darling by the Beatles that uses a very similar chord progression. A lot of those additional, really colorful, pretty chords are part of it, So if, let's say we were to, I don't remember what key originally it is, but let's say it's in the key of G, right? So if I were to just use my ear to try and figure it out, I'm gonna sing it. So bear with me here. I'm not the best singer, but I'm just gonna navigate through it with it. So, oh darling, please believe me. Nope. Please believe me. Believe it. Ooh, okay, I think, so it's 1, please believe me, the 5 chord, and I think it sounds like it goes to the 6 minor. I'll never do you no harm. Yeah, so it's 1, 5, 6 minor, 4. Believe me. Oh, nope. Believe me. Believe me when I tell you. Okay, so it's like 4, 5. I'll never do you So it's just like going back and forth from 4 and 5. Let's see. No harm. Yeah, and then does that very similar turnaround, you know, which is a very familiar thing, that 1 to 4 to 1 to 5. I mean, even 1, 4, 5 blues progressions do that too, but it just hits different, you know, when you're dealing with a blues progression like this. So there you have it. That is what I consider the greatest blues progression of all time, and you're going to have so much fun playing these chords and just being inspired by all the sounds that they can give you. And remember earlier when I mentioned that this chord progression is a great backdrop for playing lead guitar? Well, what if I told you that I've already done the thinking for you on what your next step is to playing lead over a progression like that? Well, it just so happens to be that free gift I was telling you about, and now that you've made it to the end of the lesson, I gotta make good on my promise, and haha, here it is. This is a free blues solo heat map lesson that's gonna show you how to play blazing hot blues solos all over that fretboard, over any kind of blues progression, including the one that we learned about today. So be sure to click here to claim your copy, or check the link in the description box. I personally believe that blues guitar is immortal, and it has left its imprint on Western music as we know it. And it's incredible chord progressions, just like the one we learned today, that are great reminders of that.